Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Nandi. Welcome to my YouTube channel Ecstasy of Physics. In this video, we are going to talk about the mind map of the different units of AP Physics 1. The first unit is kinematics, second unit is dynamics, and the third unit is circular motions and gravitations. In this video, we'll be talking about the up to circular motions.
So kinematics, first of all, we have defined that is the motions. It's related to the motions of any object. Any object. So this one, this is the definitions of the kinematics. Then under this kinematics, first we went through the different parameters. And under these parameters, we went through displacement, distance, then speed and velocity, and finally we talked about the acceleration. The distance we considered, this is the path traveled by the object, that's representing the distance. Then under the displacement, we have considered the displacement as is the shortest path in between the initial and the final position, that's representing the displacement. Speed is the time rate of change of distance, so the distance per unit of time, that's representing the speed. To define the velocity, we have considered is the rate of change of displacement, that means displacement per unit of time, that's representing the velocity. And the acceleration, it can be represented as is a change in velocity per unit of time, so it will be delta v upon delta t, where delta v stands for change in velocity and delta t stands for change in time. After that, under this kinematic sections, we went through the different equations, kinematical equations. The equations what we have covered under this kinematics, the first equation is that is S equal to u plus v upon 2 times by t. So that's basically representing that u is the initial speed, v is representing the final speed, u plus v by 2, it gives the average speed, times by t, t stands for the time, so it will be giving the total distance traveled. So that is the first equation. Then the second equation of kinematics, that v equal to u plus a into t, final velocity equal to initial velocity plus acceleration into time. S equal to ut plus half a t square, that's representing the displacement equations, where S stands for the displacement, u is the initial velocity, t stands for time, and a stands for the acceleration. And final velocity square equal to initial velocity square plus twice into acceleration into displacement. So these are the all four equations we went through under this kinematic sections. And note that always we have considered that is the constant acceleration. Constant acceleration, for constant acceleration only these equations are valid. Then the kinematics, we have defined different types of motion. So under the different types of motions, we went through one-dimensional motions and two-dimensional motion. One-dimensional motion and so it can be defined as 1D motions and the 2D motions. The example of 1D motions, you can consider the free fall condition. The examples of one-dimensional motions and two-dimensional motions we are considering, that's the free fall conditions and the projectile motion. Free fall conditions, it is something like any object if it is thrown in the upward directions. if it is thrown in the upward directions, so it will be moving with certain speed, but since the accelerations, that is same as the gravitational acceleration, it exerts in downward direction, the object is completely constantly slowing down, and after that, after achieving a maximum height, it will come back to the ground again. So that will be that during the falling conditions it's freely, so that will be considering as the free fall conditions. And in case of projectile motions, if any object has been thrown with certain velocity at certain angle with respect to the horizontal, so that will be representing the projectile motion. During the projectile motions, we went through the different equations. Those are related to that total time taken. So under this projectile motion, the important things what we have to go through, that is the time of flight. These are the important parameters of the projectile motions that we have to go through. That is the time of flight. Time of flight means total time taken to cover the entire path. That's considered as the time of flight. Maximum height. So during the motions of the projectile motions, what is the maximum height it got traveled? So maximum vertical displacement, that's considered as the maximum height. And the range is being considered, it is the maximum horizontal distance traveled, that's representing the range. So let's consider the object, it has been thrown with the initial velocity v, so it is being considered as the velocity of projections and angle it makes, that is the angle of projection theta. Then the expressions of time of flight, that will be equal to v square, that will be equal to 2 into v into sine theta upon g, that's representing the time of flight. And the maximum height h, that is equal to v square sine square theta by 2g, and the range r, that is equal to, it is v square sine 2 theta by g. So these are the expressions of these three equations that we have to remember. And besides that, one more equations also we have in case of projectile motion, that if we can remember, that will be quite easier for us to solve the projectile motions problem in case of AP Physics 1. So that is the equations of trajectory, or the parabolic equations, or the equations of the path of the object. So it's trajectory equation that can be represented by y equal to x tan theta minus half into g into x square by v square sec square theta. So this is the final equation. So where this y and x are representing the any point on this projectile, means its coordinate of any point on this parabolic path, and rest of the parameters like v, that's the initial velocity, or you can consider the velocity of projection, theta is considered as the angle of projection, and rest of the parameter, g is the gravitational acceleration. So this is the entire things of this motions of kinematics. And finally we went through the graphical representations of this from this kinematic section. Under these graphical representations, we went through the different graph. Those are the under the graphical representations we went through, that is the displacement time graph, vt, that stands for the velocity time graph, and at, that stands for the acceleration time graph, where this t represents the time. And there is a interesting fact in between this all these graphical representations, means the relations. So from the displacement time graph, if we have, so from the displacement time graph, if we can determine that gradient or the slope of the graph, that is going to represent the velocity. So it's ds, or you can consider delta s upon delta t, change in the value of displacement by change in the value of time, that represents the velocity. From the vt graph, velocity time graph, if we can determine that gradient from the velocity time graph, that is going to represent the acceleration. So it's dv dt, that represents the acceleration. And if we can figure out what is the area under the curve, area under the vt graph, that is going to represent the displacement. and from the AT graph, accelerations time graph, if we can determine the area under the curve, that is going to represent the velocity. So these are the important things that we have to remember. From the displacement time graph, gradient is going to represent the velocity. From velocity time graph, the gradient is going to represent the accelerations, and the area under the VT graph is represents the displacement. And from area time graph, the area from acceleration time graph, the area under the curve is represents the velocity. So this is a interesting things. Based on that, we'll be having that lots of numericals in AP Physics 1. That free response questions also, it contains that so many like graphical representations, and they'll be asking to plot the graph. So we'll be getting this type of question. So this one we can consider, this is the entire mind map of the kinematic sections what we have to go through under this AP Physics 1. Everything it has been included in this flowchart. Next we'll be talking about the dynamics. This dynamics is the unit 2 under this AP Physics 1 course. Under this dynamics, so dynamics we can consider to define that part, we can say it's related to the cause of the motion. That's defining, I mean, is the branch of the physics under which we are going to discuss the cause of the motion. So cause of the motion means it's basically representing the any like any object, it is in rest condition. It is, if it is in rest condition, then some external factor it needs to make the object in motion, and that external factor is nothing but the force if it is the linear motions. And if it is like in rotating condition, then we have to provide the it's the torque. So basically the dynamics, it can be classified into two way, that linear dynamics and rotational dynamics. However, in these sections we are only going to consider the linear dynamics. This rotational dynamics, it's the again we have to consider under this unit 7 module in the separate module. So here we have only considered the linear dynamics, and under this linear dynamics we have started our discussions from the inertia. We have started our discussions with the inertia. Inertia means which is basically representing if any object it is in rest, then it will be having the tendency to maintain the rest of inertia, or if it is in motion, then the object having the tendency to maintain its inertia in motion. That means inertia is the property of the substance by virtue of which it will be trying to maintain its condition. So that's representing the inertia. Now this inertia, it can be classified into two ways: inertia in rest and inertia in motion. After that, we have defined under this linear dynamics part, we have defined the Newton's laws of motion. And the Newton's laws of motion, there are three laws we have: first law of motion, second law of motions, and the third law of motion. The first law of motion, which is also known as the law of inertia. According to that first law of motion, if any object it is in rest condition, then it will be in rest unless and until any external force will be exerted on the object, and still it will be valid for as well as motion also. That means any object if it is in motion, then it will be trying to maintain the same motions unless and until will be providing some applied force to resist its motion. So that's basically stated under this first law of motion. Under the second law of motions of Newton, it is basically stated that the force exerted on any object that is proportional to the rate of change of momentum. Force that is proportional to the rate of change of momentum. So it's delta P upon delta T. So it's from there we are considering that F equal to certain constant K and delta P upon delta T, where this delta P is representing the change in momentum and delta T is a change in time. K constant, that is basically representing as 1. So we are getting that force equal to delta P. Instead of P we can write mass times velocity, because momentum is the product of mass and velocity, upon delta T. Since the mass, which is always conserved, it is not going to change with respect to the time, so we can keep outside of this difference part. So m into delta V upon delta T. Earlier in the kinematics part we have defined that change in velocity per unit of time, that represents the acceleration. So from there we can say that force equal to mass time acceleration. And finally the derived form of the Newton's second laws of motions, that is force equal to mass times accelerations, and that force is nothing but the net force exerted on the system. Under the third law of motion, which is basically representing that actions and the reactions paired, that means to every actions there is an equal and opposite reactions. That's representing the third law of motion, Newton's third law of motion. Now for example, let's say this one is representing the earth. Any object it placed on the surface of the earth, mass of the object we can consider as m. Now mass of the earth we can consider its big M. The object is getting attracted by the earth towards the center of the earth by the gravitational force that we can consider, that is F1, and the object is also attracting the earth towards its own direction, then that force it can be represented as F1, or let's say F21, and this is F12. So F12 is representing the force exerted on the object by the earth, and F21 is representing the force exerted by the on the earth by the object. And according to Newton's third law of motion, these two forces are representing the actions and the reactions paired. So according to this Newton's third law of motion, that F12 that should be same as that F21. By magnitude these two forces it would be equal, but they are opposite in directions. And most important thing is Newton's third law of motion, which is which is basically represented on two different objects. It's not on the same object. So these two forces will be exerted onto different objects. Now under this dynamic section, one more interesting thing we have, that's the free body diagram. That's basically representing the free body diagram. Under this free body diagram we have considered like many situations. For example, we have considered the different types of forces, means any object if it is on the inclined plane. So in that case what would be the forces exerted in that case? That would be the first situations we went through under this free body diagram. And the free body diagram corresponding to these sections, it would be the gravitational force, it is exerted in downward directions. If the angle of inclinations we are considering as theta, the mass of the object if it is m, then it is resting on the surface will be providing the normal reaction force on the object, that would be can be represented by Fn. If the surface is having certain amount of frictional force, then the mu stands for the coefficient of frictions, then there will be a certain frictional force exerted in the upward directions along the inclined plane. And the component of gravitational force, it can be one component of gravitational force, it is exerted in the downward directions, and the other one it will be exerted along the perpendicular to the inclined plane. This component, according to vector resolution, this component it would be Fg cosine theta, and here it would be Fg sin theta. This Fg sin theta component, it is a component of the gravitational force which is exerted along the downward directions of the inclined plane, which is basically trying to rotate, or which is trying to move the object along the downward direction, but the frictional force it is exerted upward direction. If the frictional force will be sufficient enough, that means the gravitational force of Fg sin theta is not exceeding the frictional force, then the object it will be in rest conditions. If it exceeded, then it will be moving with the certain accelerations along the downward direction. Second types of free body diagram we went through, when any object is connected with a spring. When object, it is attached with a spring. So here we can consider, let's say this is a kind of a support with which a spring is connected, and at the end of the spring one mass or object is connected. Now if we are providing certain amount of external force on the object, the spring is going to be elongate, and once we'll be removing that external force, the object, it will come back to its initial positions. And the reason behind that, why it is coming back to its initial positions, and that is the spring restoring force. Due to the deformations of the spring, certain amount of restoring force is developed in the spring, and that restoring force that can be represented by F is proportional to the negative of displacement, where the displacement it is represented at x. Negative sign is represents that in the opposite directions of that, the restoring force is built. In the opposite directions of the displacement, the restoring force is built, and that force that can be represented by F equal to negative k into x. And from there we went through, that is basically representing the restoring force. From there we went through the amount of spring potential energy is stored in the spring, that can be represented by the equations, that is half k x square. So this is a kind of a situation we went through. After that we went through the pulley related problem. Pulley problems. The pulley problems, it is deals with where any pulley, it is in fixed conditions with any support, and there are two masses attached with the pulley. Let's say the mass that is m1 and this mass that is m2. Now we can consider that m2 it is heavier than m1, so due to which whenever it is in rest conditions, means that by the help of some external force we have we kept the system, it is in stationary condition. But once we have removed the external force, since the m2 mass is heavier than the m1, due to which it will be start moving in downward directions with particular acceleration. Now in this type of problem we have to determine that what would be the accelerations and tensions exerted along the length of the string. So here if we can draw the free body diagram, we'll be getting that corresponding to this mg, that would be the downward force, that is the gravitational force, and the tension exerted upward. So we can say it's m2g downward, that's the gravitational force, and the tension exerted, that is upward. Similarly for m1 object also, tension exerted upward and the gravitational force, that is downward. And since it is moving downward and there is a net force exerted in the system, so from the Newton's second laws of motion, so we can say there would be an acceleration that will be in the downward directions, and here is certain acceleration, same acceleration, because both are connected by a single string, so it would be in the upward directions. Now for the second object, we can say that summation of F, that is equal to mass time acceleration, and the mass of the second object, that is equal to m2, and that expressions we are getting from the Newton's second laws of motion. And here we can say that net force, it would be downward, since it is moving in the downward direction, so we can consider that m2g, that is higher, greater than the tension, so m2g minus tension, that is equal to m2a. And from the first one we can say that the object, it is moving in the upward direction, which means the net force exerted on the first object, it is in the upward direction, and that can be represented by summation of F, it is equal to m1 into a, and that is equal to t minus m1g, that is equal to m1a. If we solve these equations, then we will be getting that t and the accelerations expressions. If we solve these equations, we will be getting the expressions of acceleration and the expressions of the tension. So that is equal to, expressions of acceleration is m2 minus m1 into g by m1 plus m2, and expressions of tension, that is 2 m1 m2 by m1 plus m2 into g. Under these dynamic sections, we went through one more interesting thing, that's the friction concept. Frictional force, it's a force which is trying to oppose the motions of any object. If it is in rest conditions, then if any force exerted on the object, the frictional force is a kind of a self-adjusting force, so it is built in between the junctions or in between the contact surface of the object and the ground, and that frictional force is trying to oppose the effect of the applied force. And the graphical representations of this frictional force and the applied force, that we can get like this one, where the y-axis is representing the frictional force and the x-axis is representing the applied force. Now the thing is, up to a certain maximum value we'll be getting that frictional force maximum, so that point is representing the limiting friction. It is representing the limiting frictions, and above the beyond that, if the frictional force, if the applied force exerted, then the object it will be in moving condition. So initial part, that's representing the static friction zone. And beyond that we are getting the kinetic friction zone. Always the coefficient of kinetic frictions, and that is less than the coefficient of the static friction. Coefficient of the frictions that can be represented by, it's a dimensionless quantity, and it's a ratio of the normal frictional force times by the normal reaction. So that ratio is known as the coefficient of the friction. If the object it is in rest condition, then the frictional coefficient is known as the coefficient of static frictions. If it is in motion, then it is known as the coefficient of kinetic friction. Circular motions and gravitation, that is the third unit of the AP Physics 1 course. So here in this circular motions part, first we have defined that what is the circular motion. Circular motions, it is a kind of a motions executed by an object with respect to a fixed point, and it is following a circular path. So that's representing the circular motion. Under these circular motions, then we went through the different parameters. We have defined the different parameters under the circular motions, and those are the angular displacement. The different parameters of the circular motion, those are the angular displacement, angular velocity, and angular acceleration. Angular displacement, which is represented by theta, angular velocity, that is represented by omega, and angular acceleration, that is represented by alpha. After that we went through the relations in between the angular and the linear kinematics. Before going to that linear kinematics relations, the relations in between this angular displacement, velocity, and accelerations, we have the angular velocity omega, that can be represented by change in angular displacement, that is delta theta upon delta t per unit of time, and angular acceleration, that can be represented by change in angular velocity per unit of time. So it's delta omega by delta t. And the unit of angular displacement, that is radian, that can be represented by rad in short. Unit of angular velocity, that is radian per second, so it can be represented by rad per second. And unit of angular acceleration, that is radian per second squared, so it can be represented by radian rad per second square. And all are the vector quantities, that means beside magnitudes it will be having the directions. And with the linear kinematics parameters, the relationship we have, that is equal to S equal to R theta, V equal to R omega, A equal to R alpha, where this S, V and A, they are representing the displacement, velocity and accelerations along the linear coordinate systems, and R representing the radius of this circular path. Theta, omega and alpha, that's representing the angular displacement, angular velocity and angular acceleration. In case of circular motions, if we are going to define precisely the type of accelerations we are going to get in case of circular motion, so that we can define in two ways. One is that linear accelerations, and other one is the angular acceleration. Angular accelerations, that we can define by alpha, and linear acceleration, this linear acceleration also it can be classified into two ways. Linear acceleration also it can be classified into two ways: tangential accelerations and centripetal acceleration. Tangential acceleration, that can be represented by, let's say, the object P, which is revolving in this circular path with angular velocity omega. O represents the center of the circle. In that case, the tangential velocity it can be represented by V. Once it has reached to some different locations, it will be having the different directions of tangential velocity. So from here we can define here the directions of this tangential velocity is getting changed in case of circular motion. Generally the circular motion, it can be, there are two types of circular motions we can have. One is that uniform circular motion and other one is the non-uniform circular motion. Under this AP Physics course, we'll be having only the uniform circular motion. So uniform circular motion means this omega angular velocity that will be always constant, and non-uniform circular motion, this omega, it's not constant, since we have defined the relations, that relationship in between angular velocity and angular linear velocity, that is equal to v equal to r into omega. Since omega is constant, that means v equal to constant, which means the magnitude of the tangential velocity, it is always constant. So from there we can say that in case of uniform circular motion, there is no change in the value of the magnitude of this tangential velocity, and this tangential acceleration that can be represented by is delta v upon delta t. That means this tangential acceleration, it only values for non-uniform circular motion. In case of uniform circular motion, that delta v upon delta t, it becomes 0. And in case of centripetal acceleration, the centripetal acceleration that will be always there in case of uniform or non-uniform circular motion. Since the velocity, it is continuously changing its direction. So we know that velocity, it's a vector quantity. Since it's continuously changing its direction, so the accelerations we introduced in case of circular motion. If you are going to draw the velocity vector here, the final velocity that is represented at these directions, just consider the parallel directions here, and the initial velocity, it is represented in this direction. So we know that acceleration, that is equal to the change in velocity per unit of time. So change in velocity means we have to do the subtractions of these two vector. Now if you are going to do the subtraction, then we can draw it here. This is the final velocity, let's say this is vf, and this is the initial velocity vi. So at the end of the final velocity vector, we can draw the initial velocity in the opposite directions. So that will be representing the means we are taking negative of vi vector, and then this is the by magnitude, it would be equal. So now if we can take the resultant, that is basically represented vf minus vi in terms of vectorial form, and that is representing the change in velocity. Look at the directions of this change in velocity, it will be towards the center of the circle, and from there the originations of centripetal accelerations we are getting. The centripetal acceleration, which is basically produced in case of circular motions due to the change its directions, not due to the change its magnitude. And directions of centripetal accelerations, it will be always exerted to the center of the circle. So that's why this centripetal acceleration, it is also known as the radial acceleration. And the expressions of the centripetal acceleration, that is equal to v square upon r, where v stands for the tangential velocity, r stands for the radius, or it can be represented as is omega square times r. Omega is the angular velocity. So that's the expressions of the centripetal acceleration, which is radially inward directions exerted, radially inward or towards the center of the circle. And the unit of these accelerations, the angular acceleration unit, that is radian per second square, that already we have defined earlier. The linear accelerations, whatever will be the linear accelerations, its unit is meter per second square. So here we are having the tangential accelerations also meter per second square, centripetal accelerations also is meter per second square. And finally, in case of rotational mechanics, by using these parameters, we are having the rotational equations. These are the all equations we have in case of the rotational kinematics, that is omega equal to omega naught plus alpha into t, where omega stands for the final angular velocity, omega naught is the initial angular velocity, alpha is the angular acceleration, and t stands for time. Then angular displacement theta equal to omega naught into time t plus half into alpha into t square, and omega naught square, that is the final speed square, equal to omega naught square, that final speed square equal to initial angular speed square plus twice into alpha, that's the angular accelerations, times by theta is the angular displacement. So after combining that, we are getting this equation. And finally, in case of circular motions, we are having the final parameter, that's the requirement of the force which is responsible to rotate the object, and that force is known as the centripetal force. We had the centripetal accelerations, and from there we are getting the centripetal force also, which is exerted to the radially inward directions on the object. And this centripetal force, it cannot produced by itself. Some other form of force is going to provide the centripetal force, and that force, it could be anything. There would be that multiple applications of this centripetal force, like the in case of like planetary motions, in case of planetary motions of the any planet. So in that case, the gravitational force is going to offer the centripetal force. In case of motions of any car in a circular turn, so in that case, the frictional force, if the road is horizontal, in that case the frictional force is going to provide the centripetal force. So that's the like different applications we have in case of circular motion, and this is the expressions of the centripetal force. M omega square r, it is exerted to the radially inward directions.